Got something to say? Get in on the conversation at 415-915-2291. That's 415-915-CALL-1.
Welcome to Conspiracies Against Wellness with your host, Janelle Elgaway.
Good evening. Welcome to Conspiracies Against Wellness. I'm your host, Janelle Elgaway. Tonight, we will continue our discussion on gastroparesis with guest Laura Schmidt. If you have a question for tonight's guest, you could call in at 415-915-2291 or call 1. Or you can leave a comment or question on our YouTube channel that is streaming live called Conspiracies Against Wellness Show Livestream. Yesterday, we had guest Melissa Van Houten. I am so impressed with her. When we are new to disabilities or chronic health issues, our lives are turned upside down. There is no playbook on how to deal with the loss of our healthy lives, how to prepare and talk with families and friends, what treatments to do, and how to seek out the right doctors, and so much more. Yet, in the last 3.5 years, Melissa not only learned how to accept this new life, she's become a huge advocate within the gastroparesis community. Tonight, guest Laura Schmidt will talk about her 16-year personal journey with gastroparesis and the wonderful advocacy work she does for the community. I want to stress on how important it is that we come together and help support, advocate, and raise awareness for the gastroparesis community. It's important to raise awareness and advocate for all communities concerning health and wellness, but I've never seen a community that has such a lack of information and lack of solid treatments. And this is why I'm honored that Call Nation has been able to have these amazing ladies on. Laura, welcome to Conspiracies Against Wellness. How are you this evening?
I'm great. Thank you very much for having me, Janelle.
Well, we're happy to have you. Please tell me a little bit about yourself.
Well, my name is Laura Schmidt. I have been on this earth for almost just shy of 49 years. I am a type 1 diabetic, have been since I was 10 years old. I have gastroparesis for 16 years. I have Barrett's esophagus from the gastroparesis, which is a deterioration of the esophagus lining that unfortunately does not grow back. And I also have a gastric neurostimulator and a J-tube, which is a feeding tube.
We'll get into that a little bit. When we spoke earlier, you said at age 10, your doctor said you wouldn't live to see your 40th birthday. Why was this?
Well, when I was diagnosed with diabetes and in the hospital, there was a bunch of doctors, and at that time, medicine was so far behind where it is now, and type 1 diabetes was the third leading cause of death in the United States. And blindness was it was the leading cause of blindness at the time also. And they said I would never see 40. Back then, our treatment for diabetes was treated with insulin that was derived from from pigs and cows. And it worked sort of, but really did not do a very good job. So people did not live all that longer. About the time I was about 22 years old, I believe, real quick, they came out with a synthetic insulin, which changed the lives of all diabetics, and we're living so much longer. And unfortunately, in that process of living longer, the gastroparesis has come to light. Gastroparesis was originally called diabetic gastroparesis until about 13, 14 years ago. because more diabetics presented with it than anybody at the time. And then the idiopathic community, once people were starting to get diagnosed properly, they realized there were so many more. So now it's about 40% diabetic.
So you're saying that
68.
gastroparesis wasn't around for a long time because of the lifespan of people, but because
Yeah, in diabetics anyway.
Okay, all right.
That much I do know. But, I can't say it wasn't around and people weren't diagnosed with it, for a long time. There's been so many people that, don't get properly diagnosed, and 30, 40 years ago, medicine was a completely different game than it is now.
When diagnosed with gastroparesis, what happened next? Did the doctors know what it was? How did you get diagnosed?
No. I had spent, I think, about 5 major hospital visits. Unfortunately, my major symptoms with it are nausea and vomiting. And I'll get rid of anything that's in my stomach and then just bile or nothing. It can happen for days. And being a diabetic, you end up having to be in the hospital for fluids and et cetera. And I had about 4 or 5 hospital visits. I was in another new hospital. A GI came through, looked at the vomit, and it was classic gastroparesis. He knew what it was. He was a small GI, too. He wasn't a very big hospital or doctor. And he diagnosed it with me after he did an endoscopy and had to clean food out of my stomach and cauterize some ulcers and things because it had been sitting in there so long. Unfortunately, he was pretty much the only doctor around that knew what it was. And nobody knew how to what I had. Every time I would go into I went to the same hospital for a couple of years constantly, and they treated me the best they could by symptoms, but no one knew what gastroparesis was. Nobody. And they continued to try to treat me for other things, like to try to figure it out, because nobody knew what it was and didn't really follow it at the time because it was so new.
Can you talk about your coffee ground story?
Oh yeah, well that's the same. That's the doctor when he came in years ago. I haven't heard it a lot in the last few years, but originally the classic vomit symptom for gastroparesis, it looked like coffee grounds, which is basically one stage of your digestion in your stomach, or one stage of the breakdown of food. So they recognize that as food that's partially digested but hasn't gone anywhere. So he came in with an intern guy or a resident, somebody, and walked over, and I remember him just saying, "What does that look like?" And the guy said, "Coffee grounds," and he said, "She has gastroparesis." And he proceeded to take me in and do an endoscopy, like I said, and it took about an hour and a half for them to scoop the food out.
Wow.
It was so much.
Wow.
And then I had been at this for, a while, so I had really been sick, and there had been so much acid in my stomach from just food sitting there that I had over 20 ulcers that they had to cauterize.
Oh my goodness.
But even after that hospital, even in the same hospital, the other doc, nobody knew. I had to get, nurse took a lunch break and looked it up on a medical computer.
Wow.
Medical website, because we didn't have internet then for people out in the public.
Right.
At the time.
By the way, we're getting a ton of questions and comments in. Somebody, Thea Barnes wants to know, I really want an answer to whether or not people are receiving mental health care considering the magnitude of the disease. What type of therapies are available to take care of the whole person?
There really aren't a lot. I agree that mental health care is hugely important. This disease is one of the more depressing and can be one of the harder lack of quality of life diseases out there. An easier way to say that is how good of a life do you have? Have you ever had the flu? Really bad? Have that 24/7.
Wow.
All the time. That's the easiest way to explain what happens to a lot of people with gastroparesis.
Okay.
Unfortunately,
International Pain Foundation, or Barbie Engel, says stem cell therapy corrected my gastroparesis and intestinal eczema, so I am now in remission, which is awesome, Barbie. And then she says, yes, vomit and poop looks like coffee grounds. It's weird for sure. Thea Barnes
good
said,
for you. Where'd you go?
If she
Where
rates
do
it,
you get that?
I'll totally let you know. She wants Thea Barnes wants to know, when receiving a diagnosis, what treatment options are available?
Unfortunately, there are a few medications, or a couple. There obviously, if you have nausea as a major symptom and vomiting, there's the whole gamut of those that aren't, they're not specific to gastroparesis, but any of the nausea-type medicines. And usually it's trial and error. Everybody, if you talk to 100 people with gastroparesis, there's a couple that a lot of people take, and then the rest are all, something you've heard of, a compazine or something like that, but people take different ones because different ones help different people. That's usually a first-rate thing. There is one medication that is available in the United States that is called the prokinetic, which actually helps your stomach to contract, or causes your stomach to contract, which more than that, and that's the problem. It's not doing that. So,
And what's the name of that?
To help it move. And that's called Reglan.
Okay, and that's the
it
black
is
box one, right?
Yeah, it has a black box warning on it. It's a drug. The difference in side effects in drugs basically is if it breaks the brain barrier, which means it can get into your brain, the side effects can become permanent. If it doesn't, like a regular, something else that causes, a side effect, but you stop taking the drug and it goes away, those don't break the brain barrier.
Right.
And Reglan does.
Well, it's just like vitamin K, the vaccine vitamin K. It has the same exact warning. I don't understand why they would approve something like that, right?
It is, unfortunately, it's a drug that works for a lot of people.
Okay.
And so I think they weigh it that way. How many, I don't know, but I do know people that have been full-blown. The worst thing that it causes in people is called tachycardia, which is uncontrolled twitching and flipping in your hands and your head
and you started to have
body,
that,
depending
right?
on how bad.
It started happening.
When I was diagnosed, I was given Reglan, and I thought it was a miracle at the time. I started it in September, and it only took about a week, and I stopped being nauseous, and I went back to work, and I was felt like I was a little bit of a zombie, kind of, but I was like, okay, but whatever, I'm not sick. And I went back to work for a couple months, and then on Christmas I started to get some blurry vision right around Christmas, and right after that I was trying to eat something one day, and and my husband was sitting there, and I had a spoon of something, and my hand just jolted up and flipped through the spoon, through the food, in the air, and the Reglan was the only drug I was taking other than insulin for my diabetes. So he was like, you're getting off that.
Yeah.
And so I did, and I went back to the GI, and he said the only other option is a drug called domperidone, which is available pretty much in every country in the world except the United States. It is not FDA approved here.
Why do you think that? If there's a black box warning on one and not on something like that works or seems to work?
And it literally has a safety, and the number-wise, I guess, however they figure these out, it's as safe as aspirin.
Okay.
So that's how little side effects people get. Some do. They're not that bad, but you get some weird ones, or something. But it doesn't really have that many.
Right.
And they sell it, over the counter in England for nausea.
Right.
Like an over-the-counter. They don't even have to have a prescription.
And you get it shipped to you now, correct?
Yep. First started taking it, I got it from Canada. And it was pretty expensive, even 16 years ago. And they used to ship to the United States, and the regulations weren't that tough. And then a couple of years later, I met the doctor that actually fought with Janssen Pharmaceuticals to get it FDA approved twice. And he gave me overseas that I can get it very, cheaper and stuff. And quite frankly, even though it is honestly completely illegal to buy drugs from other countries, there's probably more people in the domperidone now than are on Reglan.
Is that illegal to do that?
It is illegal to buy it that way.
Okay.
Unfortunately, it's your life.
Okay.
And it's a base drug that helps so many with the all-day-long nausea that we can get.
they really does, and it helps the stomach move. So it, if your food is going to take 10 hours instead of the normal 4, and I'm just throwing a number out there, it might take 8 with the domperidone, and that doesn't seem like a lot, but every little bit helps.
Well, and why do you think that the domperidone isn't legal here? Is it money?
Unfortunately, yep. Unfortunately, like I said, I actually do know the doctor that tried to help with that and get it approved. And the makers of Reglan, and I don't have their name right now, the pharmaceutical company, they pay the FDA a lot of money for their drugs. The FDA gets a lot of money through these people, all of them, but they pay a lot. And because Janssen isn't a United States company, and they had, clout, and, we have enough drugs that we go through here, and we pay you enough money that we don't want that approved. And it was, the reasoning behind it isn't as valid as people would think. People, they scare people into thinking you're going to have a heart attack, and it's not really like that. You'd have to take a whole lot of it to do something like that, which nobody would. You couldn't. I mean, you'd be taking 100 pills, an hour or something to make it do anything bad, kill you. Not, the normal pill is a 10 milligrams, so it's not you don't take that much. But it's, unfortunately, it all comes down to money. It is awful to say, and this was back, this was back when the government ran the FDA. A lot of people don't realize that in 2009 we voted the government out and privatized it. The nation did, which I don't think has been the best idea for a lot of us, but it didn't turn out well.
Right.
Anyway,
well, and it's all those institutions.
And drugs.
Yeah, and all these institutions like the CDC, FDA, and stuff like that. They're supposed to be here to protect us, pretty much, right? And instead, it seems like they're all maybe working together to work against us, or they have their own different.
Unfortunately, like I said, the FDA went private, and if you're approving drugs and you're getting drugs out in the United States and you're controlling drugs, who's going to pay you? Drug companies, right?
Yep.
And it's what they do now. I mean, I know when, it was, hold on, 79, 80, say 81, between 1980 and 1982, they came out with the synthetic insulin. Back then, the FDA would test drugs, any new drug. 5 to 15 years were the clinical trials. They would find out if there were any long-term side effects. They would find out everything. So when you took a drug, there was side effects, maybe, on the aspirin is dizziness or this or that. But that was it, because they knew what the side effects were. Now, and I can honestly say this one, it's it's a public article and things, but with the type 2 diabetic drugs, that recently, if you see those commercials on TV, basically if you die, we don't care. It's ridiculous. Every side effect known to man, because they don't really know. And they did one just recently, like last year, that got released. They did a 6-month trial, and it was done by the drug company that made it.
Right, not third party.
And then it was approved.
Yeah, and now they're wanting to fast track stuff too.
Right, and some stuff isn't such a bad idea. I know they just did a ALS drug that has been proven in other countries. So they can do some stuff like that, but a lot of these, it's money.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, look how many type 2 diabetic drugs that there's lawsuits going on about them.
Oh, I know.
Because they didn't test them long enough. And it's any drug, any of them.
We have a question from International Pain Foundation. My friend's son takes an antibiotic for his gastroparesis, and he swears it helps him. Have you heard of this?
Erythromycin? Yes, if that is what you're taking.
Okay.
That is usually a standard shot at the beginning. When a lot of people, when they find out, doctors will try that. It does tend to help people at the beginning, usually, like for a short time, but a lot of people, they don't keep on it, and it really doesn't work for a lot. I am so glad it does work for her son, or his son, I'm sorry, but, because it does work for some people, but it's not a drug that we hear a lot that people, will continue to take because they have great results with it.
Right.
They try it, but it doesn't seem, to help a lot of people. But bless her, because that's a fairly harmless drug compared to a lot of the stuff or treatments that we have. So, that's a wonderful thing that he can have something that helps. That isn't.
She also commented, I had a GI doctor suggest Reglan, but I looked into it on FDA site and decided it wasn't for me due to the side effects. And then we have another question. Thea Barnes wants to know, how does this disease affect them as a whole? Does it affect the stomach only, or?
No, it actually will pretty much affect your entire system one way or another. You get it to your esophagus, and for just normal effective, if your stomach slows way down, a lot of times your intestines will also. It's just your sympathetic body, your stomach doesn't go. Constipation is a very common problem with people with gastroparesis, and a lot of times you get constipated enough, your intestines will, they're stopping. They're not moving because they're so constipated. Well, now all of your both intestines and your stomach, and even sometimes your esophagus are all going to go, okay, let's stop. We don't want to put any more food down there. And everything, your whole system will stop.
Right.
And then that makes gastroparesis worse, because anything that else helps stop it more than it already is slowed down will make it worse.
And you mentioned also your teeth, too.
Yeah, I have, like I say, unfortunately, my predominant symptoms, like I said, are nausea and vomiting. And when I say vomiting, I mean, we're talking probably in the last 16 years, 20 to 30,000 times, and that's not an exaggeration.
Oh, my goodness.
We've written them down 100 an episode, I mean, it can get really bad. Every 15 minutes tends to add up. And that's just, that's me. It's not everybody. Unfortunately, there is a condition called cyclical vomiting syndrome. That's not what I have, but it's like that. When I start vomiting hard enough, my body will continue, even if, and with the gastroparesis, once that gets aggravated, and unfortunately, diabetics now, type 1 and 2, have a disposition to nausea and vomiting because of our sugars. If they go high or low, it can make you nauseous.
So what does that acid do? I mean, it has to.
The acid burned out my esophagus.
Okay.
Most of it. The lining's gone, and it will never grow back. So, if you get people, have heartburn and get acid in your throat, in your throat. I mean, I have an acid that has like Novocaine in it or lidocaine. It numbs my throat because it's if I get heartburn because my stomach's backed up, which happens a lot. You get your stomach's not really moving in there. It's full of acid. Well, you lay down. Laying down flat, usually most of us sit up when we sleep, just for gravity.
Well, and the acid has to kill your teeth then too, right? The enamel.
I lost all my teeth. It kills it. Period. Just eats right through them.
Wow.
So many people have that problem, and I had my top redone and replaced in 2006 or 7, and then I just literally I've not had any bottom teeth 3 years. Yesterday.
Does insurance
cover
that? It was
yesterday, and I just got dentures. I'm sorry?
Does insurance cover that to get all your teeth fixed?
No.
No?
No.
I'm so sorry.
If you have dental insurance, you can get some of it covered, but most of them only pay up to like $1,500. That's not even enough for a crown,
right.
Or something. It doesn't, they'll pay some, but that, you're going to pay $1,000 to get $1,500 worth of stuff. I don't buy the insurance because some years I don't need it. Sometimes I need a lot. But it's, it's very expensive. It's very expensive. Dental work nowadays to have, quality. I mean, I know they have like the Gentle Dentals or the Aspen Dentals, or I don't know who down there, but they have a lot of, dentures for $200-300.
Right.
Don't do it.
Right.
Don't do it. I got some that weren't not like that, and they were awful, and I had a nightmare getting it fixed, and I finally just got some 2 weeks ago. Finally. Almost 3 years with no.
We have another question from International Pain Foundation. Has Laura done the gastro-stomach emptying test? It is an interesting test to describe. If yes, can you have her explain her experience?
Oh, sure. I've actually done it 5 times.
Wow.
5 times. And they basically, they don't eat anything after midnight or the day before. You should be off all meds, which is really a tough thing if you're taking like a Reglan or domperidone to be off them for 7 days.
Oh, wow.
Because you get incredibly ill. And then the process, they bring you in a Johnny, sometimes a Johnny, but not really, because you can leave in between. And you get a meal, the proper one, what it was designed with. It's a scrambled eggs and wheat toast and water. Scrambled eggs are supposedly not that easy to digest, which is interesting because a lot of us eat scrambled eggs because they're soft and break up well. A lot of gastroparesis people, but they're supposed to be fairly hard to digest. Mm-hmm. Wheat toast is a no-no, so that's hard to digest. And then they give you water. You have to wear gloves to eat this because of the radioactive stuff.
Yes, Melissa was talking about this yesterday.
Yeah. And that, so that goes, you eat that, and then they give it a minute, and you stand up in front of a big machine, and it takes a picture, and it doesn't really show the stomach, but you can kind of tell it's sitting in the stomach, and it shows where it all is in your stomach. And then you have to wait an hour. I know when I had them, I was allowed to just leave and go somewhere else in the hospital. You come back, it's a 4-hour test, so you have to come back 4 times. And they do the same thing. They take a picture, and they see how much of it leaves your stomach in a 4-hour period, which is for normal digestion. 4 hours, your stomach has broken your food up and has put it into your small intestine to absorb everything in normal digestion. So that's why they do 4 hours. They see if you're slower than that. And they clock it each time how much has moved into your intestines. And then at the end of the test, the basic end of the test is your result. If there's more than 10% of it left in your stomach, you're considered to have slowed digestion. That doesn't mean you have like full-blown gastroparesis, but it's at least slowed. Mm-hmm.
Why did you have it 4 times?
Actually, I have a gastric neurostimulator.
Right.
And
I would like you to talk about it.
Both, yeah, they kind of go together. Same doctor. I live on the East Coast, and I actually had 2 years of 26 hospital visits and literally thought I was going to die because, again, nobody knew what was going on at the beginning. And my primary care physician, because there was no internet that we had, no Google, no access to it, my doctor primary looked on a medical website and found an article from a doctor that was one of 2 that together had created this thing called the gastric neurostimulator, which is basically an electric shocker for nerves. They shock the bottom muscles of your stomach in hopes of interrupting the signal from the nerves for nausea going to your brain. That's what it's basically made for. It's to help interrupt the nerve signal so that you don't get nauseous. It's a little unit, sits over to the side of it's on the right side, lower abdomen. It's in a skin pocket, so it's right under the skin, but it's not really that big. It's like an older small cell phone, the way they used to be. And then there's a wire that has 2 leads, wires that go into the base of your stomach. It sends electric shocks to those, again, in hopes of the nerves that are in that area that send the signal to your brain to be nauseous, because they actually know that. That's where they are. It hopes to interrupt that signal so that you're not as nauseous. I went out, they had seen that, and it was for diabetics, and they were having some success with it, and my doctor brought it to me, and after the 2 years that I had, I was on it, and I was there a week and a half later, approved by insurance. I was in the FDA study. It was experimental, so they did not have to approve it, but apparently after the 2 years of spending a lot of money on me, they probably decided it was a good idea to try it. Okay. So I flew out to Kansas. I got the stimulator, the J-tube, and the first test I had, they did it beforehand because you had to have at least 10% left to get into the into the FDA study for the stimulator.
Right.
And that's why I went back, because the stimulators have to be checked, and the surgery I had was nothing like they do now. They do it laparoscopically now. Unfortunately, I had the right down the middle, gutted down the middle kind of thing.
Wow.
Much bigger. Yeah, I mean, it's okay. When it wasn't a big deal, I was in the hospital 2 days, and I took off and was able to leave and fly home.
Now this one, though, didn't work for you very well, did it? And you had to get a second one?
Yeah, back then, unfortunately, it was a great little idea, but it only had a very limited amount of electricity, shock, like the voltage of the shock, I guess. It only had a very limited amount, and apparently was not enough for me to help me. It took, years. It got a little better and a little more smaller, and they had put in major ways to adjust it, so they could adjust it to help people, because everybody was different. Everybody needed, a certain specific setting that you would have to trial and error and figure out. So the newer one, I had to wait, unfortunately, until, because I was unfortunately at the time on Medicare, they wouldn't let me change it until the battery died.
Oh, wow.
And it hung on. It hung on until December of 2012.
It's like the Energizer Bunny.
It wouldn't stop. I'm like, really? It's still going. But I was given the new. They put in the new one, and I have to say, for me, because the surgeon had checked the settings that I had before and knew that it didn't work for me, so we knew we were going to have to go higher. And because I had one already, a lot of times people have surgery and they don't turn it on yet. But because I had already had one, they turned it on and turned it up a little. Mm-hmm. And I woke up not nauseous, and I thought it was the best day of my life.
That's awesome. That's awesome.
And it really was. I mean, it took months of resetting, doing new settings, and getting it right for me. Mm-hmm. And I certainly do get a lot of electricity. I have it really kind of maxed out, but it works. It doesn't take away all the nausea. It doesn't take away any of the other symptoms, but it helps give me a quality of life that I'm not nauseous every day, all day, because that you can't function. I don't care who you are. You can fake it once or twice, but you can't function like that.
Right. I couldn't imagine.
There's no way to live.
Yeah.
So it's it was a lifesaver, and I literally up till then, after the first 2 years, I was still in the hospital. Usually a week or more for 7 to 10 times a year. Wow. And then since 2012, I've only been, knock on wood, in once. Yeah. And I'm pretty happy about that.
I would be too. Hey, Laura, we're going to take a quick break, and we'll be right back.
Sure.
Okay.
Got something to say? Get in on the conversation at 415-915-2291. That's 415-915-CALL-1.
Welcome back to Conspiracies Against Wellness. We are here with Laura Schmidt. If you have a question for Laura, you could call in at 415-915-2291. We are just talking about your neurostimulator. Are you in a lot of pain right now currently?
Yeah, it does cause a lot of pain. There are so many reasons. My stomach has literally been wrecked. I would say, just for lack of a better word, from all the vomiting. So it's gotten to the point where it's a little sensitive. Mm-hmm. So every time I eat anything, it doesn't matter what it is, as soon as it hits my stomach, it hurts. Mm-hmm. Like somebody's in there, really squeeze in, or it really kind of is painful. And even moving out through the stomach and in the intestines, and people have many pains from it, and it's hard to describe because everybody's pains, nobody knows exactly where it is. Right. Kind of, it's here or it's here, so we don't know, but it is constant in a lot of people. Mm-hmm. I've been on the same pain prescription for 14 years. I'm not a fan of having to take anything, but it is, if every time I eat, I am going to hurt, and I know that, and it won't stop for, hours and hours and hours if I don't do anything.
Does the pain medication stop you up, though?
Fortunately, the one I take is a actual synthetic pain medication, so it's not like a regular opiate, which will stop you up, and there is actually a real, if somebody wanted to research it, there is actually an ingredient in, say, Percocets or what are they called? Vicodins, I think they're called.
Yeah.
Drugs like that. There's an actual ingredient in it, why I don't know, that they know, and it sends a signal to your gut to slow down.
Huh. That's interesting.
Why it's in there, I don't know why they need it in there and why they haven't figured out how to get it out, but it is in there, and all pain medicines have that in there in some form,
right.
that ingredient. And some are worse than others. You get up into the Percocet level, and those are, those will really stop up anybody. It doesn't matter who you are.
Yeah.
And you don't have to take a lot of it either, and it'll slow things down.
Oh, Barbie says the MU receptor.
Oh, okay.
I didn't know that, so thank you, Barbie.
Thank you.
I have a question. You mentioned a J-tube earlier. What is this, and what does it help you with? What does it do?
They're actually, it's back to, real quick, back to the treatments.
Sorry.
Again, there's those two drugs. There's nausea medicine. There's feeding tubes. I have one, but there's a few different ones. And then the stimulator, and then if you're totally can't eat and they can't do anything, you end up on TPN. And those are basically the treatments for gastroparesis currently.
Wow.
There really isn't much else. They're Band-Aids. That's all they are. And there is a lot coming down the line. There's a lot in the works. We have stuff that's probably going to be released next year that has wonderful promise. But right now, and for the last 16 years, there has been, most of these treatments have been here. I mean, I've had this J-tube. I have it switched out every 3 to 4 months, but I've had one for 14 years. I got it it was 14 years ago when I did the tube and that. Mine goes into my small intestine right below, a couple inches below where my stomach would empty in, where my stomach empties in. The tubes are in there so that you can, feed through them. You can either, it depends on if you can't eat at all or really can't eat much at all, ever, because you go into like violent vomiting or something all the time. People they get bagged food, it's liquid, but it's nutritional food. You can get it through prescription to feed through these tubes.
Okay.
There's also a G-tube, which is just a gastric tube, which is a stomach, goes actually into your stomach. And those are mostly for venting. We get, unfortunately, because we have so much acid that sits in our stomachs because things don't move fast enough and get out, we form our own little special, for lack of knowing the exact term of it, it would be a super methane gas. And a lot of us, it's amazing. I mean, I can eat the smallest things, say a little, Del Monte fruit cup of peaches. Something small like that. And my stomach, and that's your stomach, not your lower abdomen, but up by your, where your rib cage stops. It's right there at the bottom. Will bloat, and it will pull everything and make literally people that are a size 8 look 9 months pregnant.
Yeah, I've seen that before.
And stretch right out. It's awful.
It's crazy.
And so some people that get a J-tube, they'll get it. They name one that's called the GJ. It's one unit, but it goes into both places, so they can vent that gas out of their stomach. And I believe they can also empty some of the acid and things out through those tubes.
You said
I don't have that one, but
okay. You said your doctors would knock you out in the hospital for a few hours. Why was that?
Yeah.
You started leading into it a little.
That's okay. For my vomiting, I can't stop, and nothing. Your normal, any regular drug, nausea, all the nausea medicines, everything. I won't stop. And they discovered that, the only way to make me stop was to literally knock me out with, some kind of drug. And it took a long time for them to find one that worked, even. Because, my husband still remembers clear as a bell being in an emergency room once, and they were trying to do it. And the doctor's like, I have given her enough to knock a horse out. How can she be awake? And my husband's like, she is the queen of vomit, man. Mm-hmm. She can, but they discovered that was the only way to make me stop. And a lot of times it would take days of continuous, I'd wake up, start vomiting again, out I go again.
Wow. And
just spend days like that. And unfortunately, I do still have those episodes, and it does last for 2 or 3 days. But because we have a tube, and because I have a wonderful husband who really helps me a lot with this disease, we discovered that I have nausea meds that and I don't take a lot. I have the lowest dose, of it, and then and it's cleared through the doctors. I'll take a couple of them, and maybe a couple of other things through my tube, and that'll knock me out.
Okay.
And I do it at home.
Yeah, because I have to imagine if you puke it up and you just took medicine, it's not going to work, right?
It's not going to work at all, right?
Yeah.
And that's one of the reasons I've kept this tube this long.
Okay.
Because it keeps me out of the hospital. People are like, why do you have that if you don't have regular feeding through it, like every day? Yeah. I did when I first got it. I used to feed all night long with a bag of food. And, which it saved my life. But I keep it because I don't have problems. I don't get infections with it. Okay. I'm very lucky that way. A lot of people can, but I'm lucky I don't. So I've kept it this long, and it's kept me out of the hospital. And so, it's a valuable little tool. It's not very big. It's taped down to my stomach, so you can't, or my lower abdomen, you can't really see it. Unless I wore like a really tight shirt, which I wouldn't, because I don't want you to go, hey, what's that thing on your body?
I have a friend that used to have one, so
it's not a big deal.
Yeah, she had.
And they're not, they are. Some people get them because they've gotten, so low in weight, and that's why I was given one. I was down to 78 pounds when I got the stimulator, and
oh my goodness,
they gave me the tube. I didn't know I was going to get the tube until I got there, and was talking to the surgeon and him, and they were like, you're kind of a little small. I was skin and bones. It was awful, and it saved my life when I came back. Every night, it was 12 hours, 9 to 9. I pretty much did it, while I slept all night long, and I gained the weight back, and most of it, not all, but most of it in like 6 months.
Oh, that's good.
Which was amazing. It makes you much healthier if your weight is on,
right?
So that your body can fight a little bit.
What is I can't even say it. Pyeloplasty?
Pyeloplasty.
Yes. What is that?
The pyloric, I believe I'm saying this right, I could be wrong. Pyloric valve is at the bottom of your stomach, and that's the valve that opens, and usually it has a certain time limit, like it opens for a certain amount and lets a certain amount of what your stomach's digesting out for your intestines to absorb. And the pyeloplasty is a kind of like super Botox or something. They kind of fuse it open.
Okay.
It's a new, the procedure itself isn't that new. It's been used for other, like people with ulcers and stuff that, harbor acid and other problems for years. But they decided to start trying it with gastroparesis patients because it's just gravity that's going to keep pulling the food through.
Okay.
Again, it might be pulling not as fully digested as you'd want food through, but, it will continue to go through. And they've done, I know the doctor that I worked with, who's actually in Texas now, he's done about almost 200 people that came, and they did the stimulator and the pyeloplasty at the same time. And because the pyeloplasty will help things move, but they still find people get nausea from it. So they put in the stimulator for the nausea and the pyeloplasty, and they have almost 200 people. I think they have one that remains sick. The rest are eating what they want, having normal lives, no problems. Right. Again, but that's only 200 people. We don't know. I have heard of other people now starting to get them around the country. I just haven't heard a lot of people's results yet, from that, other than that study that the doctor's doing, which I trust completely. I worked with him, and he's spent 35, 40 years doing nothing but this.
Let me ask you this. How far has treatments advanced or changed from when you were first diagnosed with gastroparesis, which was 16 years ago, to the present day?
Yeah, hasn't.
It hasn't.
Hasn't.
Why?
Honestly, there's nothing. I mean, again, there are a lot of drugs and things coming out now, but there's been nothing new.
Wow.
And that's unfortunate, but what are they going to come up with? They can come up with a better nausea medicine because you're nauseous. But unfortunately, they know why diabetics get it. It's basically, for an easy way to say it, it's almost the same premise as diabetic neuropathy that we get in our hands and our feet, which is nerve damage from sugar in the blood getting into the tiny ends of the nerves and either killing them or messing them up so they misfire somehow. And when they misfire, they literally, people, when they say the burning of the feet or the hands, it's like burning, meaning like you're standing on hot coals and just standing there. It's awful. And that's also part of the pain problem I get with my stomach at times, that, and it comes right on. I don't know, all of a sudden it hurts like, it feels like somebody's crushing it. I'm like, hey, but they've said because it's like kind of like that. It's nerves misfiring, which causes you to not digest properly, doesn't break the food down properly, and that can hurt. Nerves hurt. That's where pain comes from. Nerves say, hey, hurt, and they do.
We have a question from Brian. Once the food passes into the small intestine, does the normal peristalsis, did I say that right, occur? Peristalsis, sorry. Peristalsis.
Peristalsis, yes. Not everybody. For me, it does. Okay. A lot of people, it does work. My intestines are still okay. Unfortunately, there are people that do get gastroparesis, and then it moves through in their intestines and all the way, down, get paralyzed also, and have problems. I am fortunate, that mine still works, but the peristalsis in the stomach is trashed.
Okay. Yeah, I bet. We have another question. What suggestions do you have for someone newly diagnosed, and questions that they could ask their doctor?
Okay, well, if you're newly diagnosed, the first thing is maybe don't Google it. Just that's a joke, but give yourself.
No, that's kind of true, though.
Look at what. Yeah, well, it is, because
it's scary.
Something I learned a long time ago, a quick little saying, but it applies to things on Facebook, on Google, on anything that I've seen. If you have a bad experience, you're going to tell 10 people. If you have a good experience, you might tell one. Right. So when we go on, and look for something, you're going to have 10 horror stories, and then maybe one good one. Or, and if you go to the second or third page, you might start finding the doctors and the motility centers around the country that actually can tell you what the disease is.
Right. But for somebody newly diagnosed, that would be scary, right?
It is very scary. And unfortunately, just being diagnosed doesn't mean they're going to give you any information of what to do. That's also a huge problem. And that one is something that, like the woman, Melissa, that was on yesterday, works tirelessly at trying to figure out a way to have doctors, we want to get them educated so that they don't just go, oh, you have gastroparesis, because you have this much left. Your stomach doesn't digest very well.
Right.
Do you want Reglan? Here's a prescription.
Right, and they don't even give you information.
Yeah. No, unfortunately, I think the problem is they don't have it.
Yes.
And they don't have, the time or the money nowadays with all the paperwork they have to do and their offices have to do to get paid by insurance companies, that, they don't have time to sit and even Google information.
Right.
So when you go to the doctor, you want to ask your doctor, do they treat anybody else?
Yes.
Have they treated anybody else? And a lot of them might be a little offended by that, but you don't want to be his only patient and him guessing, because there's so few options that you want somebody that at least has a really good idea of maybe, we have lots of doctors that do care and try, weird things for pain or for other things. I mean, my doctor tried some inflammation drugs at one point just to see if that was a problem and if they'd help. They didn't, but it was worth a shot, because we try other things just to try it. So you want a doctor that has an idea, and that's not always easy. So if you call an office, they're going to tell you that we treat everything, and you wanted to ask them, no, does he have patients with gastroparesis? Because you're going to find, unfortunately, a lot of them don't. The best thing you really want is a motility specialist. There are centers all over the country. Unfortunately, they're kind of few and far between. You're probably only talking 15 or 20 of them, but they are the best. Cleveland Clinic is huge. They have a very big motility center. They're very knowledgeable. There's Kentucky, Texas, I know of. Unfortunately, I live in Massachusetts. We have one motility group that's, just they're so behind themselves because there's so many patients, that it's ridiculous.
Right.
So it really is getting bigger and bigger, and
so where can
it's hard to find a good doctor.
Where's the best place to find information dealing with this? I know you mentioned GPAC and AGMD.
Yeah, and those, I was going to say, they both have websites. They both are on Facebook. They both share, they're both to educate and support. Mm-hmm. And the best information you're going to get, is probably from them. I know for the AGMD anyway, I know their website, they have a list of doctors throughout the country, hundreds, from different states, from different areas. We have their, the names, the addresses, the phone numbers, and what they treat. Because AGMD does all motility disorders. But it's something for free. You can just look at that, and they're real doctors, and you can call, and they'll, if you live near them, and they'll help you. They have all kinds of links to people that are studying, gastroparesis and the drugs that are coming up the line. There are a lot of things. They have been working on them. It's just they haven't come out yet. Next year's we're very hopeful that Reglan, that has the black box warning, they've come up with a nose spray, which for people that don't have a J tube, and it's very hard for nausea medicine to work if you take it and you vomit it up. So that's even Reglan didn't always work because you couldn't take it. Right. It's a nose spray, and it has no side effects, and they are going into their fourth and final human trial with it. It's really got a great, it's got some great hope. Yeah. Because, again, like I said, Reglan does work pretty well. But, the side effects are not where, most people get them, kind of.
Well, and
or a lot get them.
Also the Facebook groups that you and Melissa are a part of, those are very helpful, too. I know you guys have a lot of information on there. And plus, also, can you talk a little bit about the work that you do? I know you make cards for people and actually send them out, handwritten cards.
I'm a little weird, I guess.
No, it's great. I think it's great.
I've learned to be, being sick like this has changed me. Before the gastroparesis took me down, I finally ended up out on disability in 2011. Before that, I was a businesswoman. I had a high-stress job. Money was a big deal to me. And a disease like this that takes you, and I mean takes you out. I literally, when it hit me originally, my poor husband, 5 days before my first anniversary, we were at my parents' for an anniversary dinner, and we were waiting for him to get there from work, and I got nauseous and started vomiting, and 6.5, 7 hours later of vomiting, they took me to the hospital, and it started, and it didn't really stop from there, pretty much, and it came on that quick, and your life goes from, one world to a whole nother one. Completely. Everything changes. I don't think anybody could ever be prepared to take on any kind of, it's not just ours, any kind of a major chronic illness.
Absolutely.
It changes your life and everybody around you and everything in an instant. And I have learned to be, I think, a better person. I've learned patience. I've learned empathy. And I've learned, the basic, don't ever judge books by their cover. You never know what's going on in someone's life. Well, that's a big deal. You learn to, like, really appreciate people. And I find great pleasure in getting people that are chronically ill like myself to smile. Yeah. I keep it that simple. I just want them to smile. So I belong to we have a smaller face group. I've been with this girl for a long time, and we send out, it's a very caring group. We talk, everybody's very open. There's no drama. We forbid it.
Would you mind saying the name of the group?
It's a secret group, but it's not really secret. You have to be invited in, but we'd be happy to invite anybody in. It's called Sharing and Caring GI Issues.
Okay.
Because we invite anybody with any GI issue in, of any kind. But it's mostly gastroparesis. And, we send them cards. I'm a frequent flyer at the dollar store. I send people cards constantly. And it's just because I know that if I walk out to my mailbox and I'm not having a great day, and there's a card from somebody that they hand wrote in and didn't send me an email or a text, I smile. It makes me happy.
I would
even
too.
If it's just for 30 seconds. Even if it's just 30 seconds. And then people, they go in, these poor people that, they're going in the hospital every other week. And we'll send them little care packages or,
nice.
Not a lot. A couple bucks worth of stuff from the dollar store, something cute.
It's
something
the thought that matters,
they can use. It's just the thought. And I know that it makes people happy on the other end. And, I live on Social Security disability. I don't have a lot of money. But instead of wasting it on other stuff, that little bit of money that would be mine to spend, I choose to do it that way.
Yeah.
I volunteered with the AGMD for 14 years and done mentoring with people that newly diagnosed or not even newly diagnosed, just out there, lost, or just need somebody to talk to, some help, some guidance. And I mentored people for years and years and years, and I loved it. Because it was just a way to, I only have my experiences. I'm not a doctor, but I also pay close
sometimes
attention to
more
everybody
though.
Around.
Yeah, you've been dealing with not only that, but you've been dealing with diabetes for 23 years. So I think that gives you more experience than some doctors sometimes.
Yeah, at this point, I'm actually 39 years into the diabetes.
Oh, my goodness. Okay, sorry.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yes, I'm old. It's okay. I'm old.
You're not old.
I say I'm just kidding. But I just, it's, it really is to have somebody talk to you that has the same problem and validates your feelings. Especially, unfortunately with gastroparesis, all these doctors, they don't blame them all for not knowing. Unfortunately, even though, I've been doing it for 16 years, they've been researching it for 30, it's not well known.
Right.
People get diagnosed nowadays and go, I got what? Never heard of it. Nobody's heard of gastroparesis. When was the last time you saw a commercial? It's not out there. And nobody knows about it. And even with me, I can't tell you how many times my physician, when I was first going in the hospital all the time, would not let me out of the hospital without a psych evaluation.
Really?
Because they get to a point, because they don't know what it is, and they need some kind of an answer.
So they think
so they
it's
end
in your
up
head.
telling you it's in your head. And I can't tell you, out of all the GP community, I've probably seen posts or talked to thousands of people that, once they got somebody to talk to, and it wasn't in their head. Because the doctors keep telling you that. You start to think it. You're like, maybe it is in my head. You don't, because what else is it? Nobody knew. Right. And even after I was diagnosed, nobody knew what it was. So the other doctors didn't follow along.
Right.
They thought they'd fix it some other way. And, it took a long time. I ended up going, into downtown Boston and finding a GI that at least knew what it was. But, that was 16 years ago, but still, nobody knows what it is until they get it.
Right.
I don't think anybody that's ever heard of it. And unfortunately, a lot of doctors, they just don't know, regular GIs. There's over 5,000 GI diseases, so they just they can't know a lot about all of them.
I know what you mean,
Can,
and the thing that bothers me too is because so I have CRPS RSD, but the thing, I'll go to a doctor, and I don't know if this happens with you guys in your community, but I'll go to a doctor, he'll say he knows what it is, but then I could tell pretty quickly he doesn't by either what he suggests or what he wants me to do, or say if I had to go to the ER for some reason, they will want to put an IV in my affected arm, they'll be rough with me. Does that happen with you guys too? And I just wish they would be honest and say, you know what, I really don't know what this is.
All the time.
Yeah.
It happens all the time. And that's why I say, like, if you're going to look for any new doctor, whether you've been doing it for a long time or you're new to it, you're going to ask the staff, because that's who you're going to get when you call.
Right.
Does he do this? And they're all going to tell you yes.
Yep.
And you have to stop and go, no. How many patients does he have that have this?
That's good advice.
Because it is a complicated disease.
Right.
And it's, if they don't really kind of, sway towards it and study towards it, then they can't know about it. And they're human. How many diseases can one of us know? A lot about. I mean, they're human.
Right.
And if they haven't been trained, like recently, it wasn't a popular thing. It wasn't taught in GI school.
Okay.
Or med school. They didn't know. It's probably only been being taught now for 10, 20 years maybe. So unless they're a 30 or 40-year-old doctor, which how many GIs are? They're all older guys. Unfortunately, almost all of them are. They really are. So they don't have the training, and they just don't know. If you have Crohn's, they're all over it because they know that one.
Right. Somebody's asking, how have you stayed so upbeat and positive, and have you dealt with your depression, and what do you believe the current treatments treat the entire body and soul? Oh, somebody wrote that before too. But how do you deal with your depression, and how do you stay upbeat?
Well, they definitely don't treat the whole body and soul, that's for sure, what's available for treatments. But I find that, all of us, I call it situational depression because I wasn't a depressed person, but because of this disease, I have my days, and they sometimes will go a couple of days where, why am I here? Why do what is life for? I have no quality of life. I have no purpose in life. And I can't get an answer, and I'm sick again, and I had to cancel plans again, and it just, every one of us get it. Yeah. Any chronic illness has to. I know they do. And like I said, I personally call it situational depression, but I find the only way I can get through it is that I have to know that there is good time. I have good days. I have good stuff. So I am in a bad place right now. I'm depressed. And I know I need to be depressed for whatever reason. I'm here for a reason, but I have to know that I am going to get undepressed and back to my life soon. And if I continue to tell myself that, I find that I can get myself out of it, within a few days, or sometimes longer. I'm not saying I'm not depressed.
Well, I know what you mean, though. Like the mindset of like, okay, you know what? I know if I go into a flare or whatever, I'm probably going to feel some depression. It's okay, right? Like, and it will change. So
and that's we go. One of our big mottos is you are not your disease,
right?
And you're not. However,
you have to embrace it.
Especially a gastroparesis type or your type disease. It's a big part of your life, and you have to let it be there because it is going to do basically what it wants when it wants. So, my mom, when I get sick and go into what a quote flare for 3 days, when I'm being, I'm knocking myself out every 4 hours to, keep myself from vomiting all this time, and I am vomiting, and it's horrible. But I know in my heart that it's going to end in a few days.
Yeah.
And I'm going to get through it. And the disease is going to do it anyway. So do I fight it? Not that I just sit there and go, okay, be sick. I fight. But, do you try to stop it when you know you can't because you've done it so many hundreds of times? No, I let it. We go with it. We treat it the best we can. I'm miserable, but after those few days, it comes, stops the quote flare, and I know I'm going to be better.
And I think that's a really healthy way. Yeah, that's healthy.
Yeah, it's the only way I can do it because I know near the beginning, especially the first 2 years without, you have a diagnosis that nobody else in the world knows about. You're like, great. That was helpful. So back then, I mean, I really was, I can't live like this, and if this isn't going to change in any way, I'm done. I can't do this. And that was how I felt then, but I don't now, because I know what the disease does to me. I've done it so long now that, what happens when I do certain things. Right. So I'm able to ward off a little bit of self-inflicted wound, pain or whatever, but not that it's intentional. It happens to us all the time. You got to remember, food, is our enemy. Mm-hmm. And not that the food is what's causing our problem, but sometimes,
body.
Yeah, and sometimes, depending on what's in your stomach already, certain foods can just help fend off nausea, and it's just because of what's in there, mm-hmm. And it's awful, people, you have to be careful what you eat, you have to be careful with everything.
We have another question from social media. Is there anything that somebody with gastroparesis can do besides medications and treatments? Is there anything natural?
Well, there's a lot of people have tried and had success with acupuncture, massage, both of those now. I mean, I've tried them all, unfortunately, other than, massage that I can't afford. Acupuncture really didn't work for me, mm-hmm. but I also know a couple people, in my, physically know them, not from, social media, that use it. And it really helps their pain, and it helps their nausea, and it just kind of helps their overall wellness, mm-hmm. As opposed to sick all day, every day. You start having breaks. There's even some people that use a chiropractor. I don't know how that works. I've never been to one. I'm just, relaying on what I've heard. But I did a study, because, I fell into some weird stuff at the beginning, and it was they were a medical doctor and a psychiatrist doctor were doing a study on hypnosis for medical purposes only, not mental in any way. And I was lucky enough to get in their study and see this psychiatrist who would hypnotize me. And hypnosis is nothing, this kind of hypnosis was nothing like what you think. The whole, go do this kind of thing. You're conscious of what's going on. To me, it was just a huge form of relaxation. And I have found that relaxation helps all of our symptoms.
Yes.
Just calmness. It will help, your stomach things relax. It's not as tense. It might not take everything away, but you can go from a misery level of, 8 to a 4. And they call it self-hypnosis. They can call it meditation. Mm-hmm. I do it all the time. I will sit back, go into my room or, something, sit on the bed and it'll take 15 minutes total.
Yeah.
And just sit there, and it's, they self-hypnotize. Not really. I'm just sitting there going, okay, clear my mind.
I started
don't
doing
really
it
think
too.
about anything.
I know, and it really has helped me a lot too. Like
and
the meditation.
It's really helpful.
Mm-hmm.
And it's so easy. It's not, there's no money, and there's no anything involved. And it's just you. You're not embarrassed in front of somebody doing, a lot of people get embarrassed when they have to try things like this. And, and a lot of these treatments also help the pain for a lot of people. Mm-hmm. Acupuncture, like I said, all the other people that I physically know, personally know that have tried it, it works well for,
mm-hmm.
really helps them.
Well, and also
Again,
to go with
that,
how important or therapeutic are your animals, and what suggestions do you have to help distract people? That kind of goes with meditation and stuff, but I know you love your animals. Can you talk about that?
But I mean, if you like dogs and you could live with one, get one. Unconditional love, especially with gastroparesis, which is a unconditionally nasty disease that mm-hmm. people don't want to talk about or deal with. And anybody with it, I'll go back to the pets in a second, but you're newly diagnosed, fine, family, friends, people really don't deal well with it.
Yeah.
They kind of go away, or they back way off. Right. They don't want to talk about it. They don't understand it.
And then you become isolated, depressed. Yeah.
Yep, and that adds to everybody's depression. Mm-hmm. And fortunately, I have a dog. My husband decided that the only way we were going to get one is to get one like we used to have, which is one of the highest energy little terriers in the world. To keep me going, thank you, because I have enough energy to be out doing that all day.
Right.
But he is unconditional love. He's there. He understands. They're your friend. They're
And I
your
have to
buddy.
think, too, it helps
They
you get up
listen.
and get out. I mean, you have to take him for a walk,
Right.
you know?
He does, yeah.
Yeah.
He does.
Mm-hmm.
That's what my husband wanted, and, you know, there are days when I'm going, you know, swearing my head off at the
Right.
dog, going, you can't see that there's no way I can go walking. I can't, you know, get out of the back
But you know
room.
what? You do it, don't you?
I do. Most of the time I do. There
Yeah.
are a few days where I'm like, dude, it's just not going to happen.
Right.
But most of the time I'm up, I take him. He loves it. You know, hits his little thing. You know, we go out and read all the P-mail. That's what we call it. But it's, you know, it's his neighborhood deal because we have a lot of dogs around in the neighborhood. So they all, you know, like to meet up, and a lot of people walk. So, you know, it's a nice thing to do, and it takes your mind. Anything for overall wellness, anything that takes your mind off your symptoms, especially when they're acting up, excellent.
Yeah.
Whether it's, you know, meditation, acupuncture, massage, a dog.
You know what's so interesting? I didn't ever expect this to do this, but when I created Conspiracies Against Wellness, I could feel like crap when I wake up in the morning, but as soon as I start talking to people and working and networking and you know, and just doing prep and stuff and researching, suddenly I'm not focusing on how bad I feel or my pain or whatever. And it's still there, but it's a distraction, and it's actually been really healing, you know, and I didn't even think about that when I was going into this. So I know what you mean. I mean, it is so
added
important.
benefit.
It is, for really.
Yeah, you know, and they are. I mean, you know, I know some people that do fish.
Yeah.
And they, you know, they have neon tanks and they have all this stuff, but they can sit in the peaceful swimming. You know what I mean? It's a peaceful thing for them.
Yeah. Or they
You know,
knit.
'cause people are like, how can you be attached to fish?
Yeah.
You know, but you can. When you have nothing else and you sit there all day long by yourself, you can really get attached to a goldfish. You know, if that's all you got. You know, and that's why, like, dogs, again, they are unconditional love.
I agree.
And you know, it doesn't matter what you're saying; they're there, and they can feel you too. So they know when you're sad. They know when you're sick.
What advice do you have for family members or caretakers that have a loved one with gastroparesis?
Well, the biggest thing I can honestly say to start just for in general is believe what they tell you. And that because if you haven't had this disease anyway, the actual way that, you know, it's not the flu vomiting, you know, like, it's a whole different ball game. Unless you've had it, you really can't totally understand it. And that's expected. But most people, you know, you have to feel everybody out a little bit first because they don't want to hear it. And you don't want to push people away by talking about it. And it's only because it's, you know, vomiting, it's constipation, it's things like that. People don't talk about that stuff, you know, in public normally. You know, we're out every day trying to change that, but because, you know, I'm the poop queen, talk about it all the time. But it's just, you know, when you have, like, regular family, just believe them and understand that, you know, things do happen in a second. We can go from being a perfectly fine, having a normal time doing anything, to vomiting, like, right there, like, within seconds. That, you know, I mean, sometimes we don't even feel the nausea. It can just happen because our stomach is like, okay, I'm way too full and it's got to go. So, you know, it's something to just believe what they tell you, and that they're not faking it.
Right.
You know what I mean? There's so many people that think we fake it. We're lazy. You know, there's nothing really wrong with us.
Yeah.
And it's like, you have no idea. You know, I fake it all the time so I don't look like I'm going to, you know, vomit on you people when I'm out and about. But, you know, that's what I fake. I don't fake that I'm actually sick.
I think why it's so hard is because, I mean, visually, you can't really, I mean, you might be able to see how bad we feel or tiredness, but, you know, it's not like you have an open wound or something. You know what I mean? It's not like something
exactly.
that's visual.
Or you're in a wheelchair or something.
Yeah.
And so we get that you don't look sick.
Right. And because it's not a well-known disease, too, it's, you know, people don't get it.
They go, huh? When you tell them what you have, they go,
because, I mean,
what?
cancer you
just
can't
like
see.
you did.
Yeah, I know.
And even describing it, you know, people just, you know, if you've never done something that's really different for your body, you know, so anything, you don't know, you know. I have no idea what it would feel like to lift, you know, 500 pounds over my head. because I don't. So how would I've never done it. How would I know? Well, how would you know what it feels like, or what we go through, and people don't believe you, and it's unfortunate.
Yeah.
And for caretakers, the patience is the advice I would give. Patience, and help your person to learn themselves. The more you learn, I think the more you learn about yourself and your own body and how it's working, because it's not working normal, so you really have to pay attention.
Well,
the more you can help yourself.
Melissa brought up a good point yesterday, and I remember thinking this too, like when I started out with having my illnesses and stuff, the more quickly that you accept that you have this and that your previous healthy life that you had is not going to be the same way anymore, you could start kind of focusing on, okay, so what is going to happen now? What are your new likes and loves? And I think it happens with any major illness that you get, that where your life has changed. Like, you have to just accept it.
And a huge part of that's something that I've always been, she'll probably, she could tell you that I've always been very big about that, because that's, I've accepted it. It's going to do what it's going to do, and I got to let it do that, but then, then I'll be okay. And if you don't accept it, which is something that is really
fight
hard.
Against it.
It's easier said than done.
Right.
Yeah. People will fight and think,
I did for years.
They can beat it, or not even that, but a lot of it, like, they can't accept any of it until they figure out why they have it.
Right.
Well, unfortunately, 60% of us, and there's millions of us,
you're not going to know,
are idiopathic, which nobody knows exactly why they have it. And so many will spend so much time and effort
on
chasing why do I have it?
Yes.
And be so sick instead of focusing on okay, I have it, let's deal with it. Let's see what it's going to do to my life, what my life is changing, now how do I do this? And figure that out. And then if you can do that, it took away about 90% of my depression.
Yeah. I want to get into...
I'm
sorry. Yeah, I know what you mean.
That's okay.
What are some tricks of the trade? You and I were speaking, and we both had a good laugh. We talk about being in the car, and suddenly you have to puke, because with CRPS, when I'm in a flare, I puke. And we made fun of that we have... the best thing to use is doggy bags. Our poop bags.
Yeah, they are.
What other tricks of the trades do you have that maybe somebody can learn from that you do, like little things?
Well, a lot of one of the huge ones. One of the biggest problems with a lot of us is that our mornings are really rough when you get up, and that's just because even in normal people, you're just like every other part of your body. Your digestive system kind of goes to sleep when you sleep, and it stops working. So when we wake up in the morning, everything that was in there is still sitting there. I sleep. Now I went as far finally as getting an adjustable bed, but I sleep basically now sitting up, and huge help. Huge. Don't get the acid that just from laying flat that will run into your throat. That doesn't happen anymore. Because I'm sitting up, and even though your stomach kind of goes to sleep, it will work a little. When you're sitting up, gravity will always pull liquids through, and sometimes some food, so it helps it to move. So it just helps the mornings a little better doing that, just as sitting up or propping your pillows up, and letting gravity kick a little bit.
Okay.
I also do a lot of brain dead days, because I just lost my thought.
We were talking. Oh no, that's okay.
Tricks of the trade. There we go.
Yeah. Tricks of the trade. Yep. So you talked about gravity and sitting up. We talked about poop bags for puke.
Poop bags are very important. I have it's a little cooler bag just because it's easier. I take my medicine again like through my tube. Well, I have to crush it up in a crusher, put it in a cup, put water in it, suck it up in a big syringe, put more water so I can have a flush after. Kind of a pain. A lot of people have a lot of different meds, and one of the worst things for us is getting sick when you're out somewhere. You're doing something, or even just driving, but you're getting sick, and if you can get your meds in you, do you have them? So you always have like an emergency bag with all of your medication, a little bit of everything in there. so that you have them right where you are, so that you can get them in you. And even if you're going to be home in a half an hour, if they do absorb right, half an hour they'll be working. So you could, and it'll help you.
No,
so
that's
it's
a
always,
smart idea.
Have just a little bag.
Yeah.
If you don't have a tube and stuff. But I have the tube, but I just carry the necessities, I have a little cooler in it. I have a little plastic cups, a grinder, and then I just throw a little plastic, pill holder thing with a little mix in there. So I have a couple of everything, and I just keep that, and I take it with me anytime I'm, going further than the store right around the corner. If I'm going to go somewhere, I have it. That's a big deal for a lot of people.
Yeah.
A little trick for...
I even forget, too. You know what I mean? I'll forget to keep
we
something,
all do.
and then I'll be out, and then my pain levels shoot up, and then I'm screwed. You know what I mean?
And you're like, oh, no.
I know.
Right.
Yeah.
And it's hard to remember. I've forgotten.
Well, I was actually excited
time.
because in the last year, I've actually experienced the best health I've had in 23 years. In many years, like 20 years. And I've been forgetting it. And at first I was like, oh, I'm excited because I'm forgetting it because I'm doing that well. But then I was like, those days that I'm not well.
Yeah, all of a sudden
I'm
it
like,
reminds you. Oh.
Yeah.
But isn't it nice to forget it briefly?
It is.
I mean, you do forget. And it amazes me that sometimes, I can go sometimes if I go a couple months without a big episode. You have all the small stuff, but that I'm so used to it that does just every day, stuff. But the big vomiting episodes and stuff that I have, and I'll go months a couple times and here and there, 2 or 3. And I'm usually having them 2 or 3 times a month. But sometimes, you get a little break. And I forget, and then when it hits, it's all of a sudden I'm like, it's new, or something. I'm like, oh, what's this? What are you talking about? What's this? You do it all the time. But you're right, you forget.
Yeah.
You're like, oh, it was great. I'm okay. But, yeah, no. Until they find the cures, for everything. I mean, that's a big deal. They have to find a cure. But
right. I have a question.
It take a long time.
I have a question, though. In your perfect world, what would happen concerning gastroparesis? Obviously cure, but I want to know more. And how can we get there? And what needs to happen or change to get there?
Well, I've been thinking about that a lot because we fight for advocacy so much, and unfortunately, even though we suffer, we have this horrible disease, we are a small group. Even though we're millions, it's still smaller than like cancer, which is the number 1 killer now. Mm-hmm. And I was going to use this as an example. I had even looked for the numbers on it. They 71,000 people, I think, are diagnosed a year. 41,000 people a year die.
Yeah.
And then there's 3.5 million worldwide that are diagnosed. Now, with cancer, how long has that been around? And how long, how much money gets raised for breast cancer and everybody else? Mm-hmm. Tons and tons. But they still, treat it with chemo, which they've had for 57 years.
Right, and 98% of that, of people that have cancer, actually chemo or radiation doesn't work for, they say.
Right.
Yeah.
And it's all that is a big moneymaker.
Of course.
That's been around
they get
that
kickbacks
long, and
for
they
that
make
stuff. Mm-hmm.
$100,000 a pop or some ridiculous, for each treatment.
It's
for,
pretty big.
For a series.
Yeah.
And for us, unfortunately, there's, they don't make money if there's just a cure.
Right.
You walk in, here's a pill, and you're good. Nobody makes any money off you. That's not what they're in business for. So it's tough nowadays to gauge, how things would work. But in an ideal world, GI doctors, GI doctors, gastroenterologists would at least know of it. And if they don't know much about it, they would, have somebody to refer to. I've always wanted to be able, and it would, I don't know how it would ever be done, is to get information from the top docs in the world, the motility specialists out there, just factual information for doctors about what is gastroparesis, what are, because there are basic symptoms, but these doctors are aware that, even though there's a list of 7 or 8, there's about 50 more that, little ones that a few people here get, a few people there get, because there's so many of us, that the basic information and there is a system now where a lot of doctors can call these big motility specialists and talk to them about a patient with gastroparesis, and have that information delivered, like literally, to every GI in the country. Like walk in their office and hand them a packet,
right,
and go, here you go, just this, so you have this, because they don't, again, they don't have time to go Google it, or they don't want to, or don't care enough to, and that way at least there's something in their office, and some of them might look at it. It's not going to make all of them look at it.
Right.
But it might
maybe that's what you and Melissa need to do, within your community, like make those packets.
It would be nice if we could motivate everybody, because we've got people in every state.
Right.
We have, and not that, that one person or two people in Utah are going to be able to hit every doctor.
Right.
But maybe if they live, they go to a big university hospital or something, they could bring some info into the GI department. Mm-hmm. Or they could go to, and one of the reasons I would love that to happen is because there are a lot of people that live in more rural areas and don't have access or a way to get to bigger hospitals or bigger, like that. And they're limited to this one GI. He's the only GI in 500 miles.
Right. And he might not specialize in it. He might not even know about it.
Yeah, or not even know about it,
yeah.
Very much. And he's just winging it, and they have no other option. They have nowhere else to go, another doctor. And there's so many like that, because there's so many areas in this country that don't have bigger, stuff. And it's just, you can't. I mean, you can't have a big hospital everywhere. But if these doctors had, a decent packet of information with a referral line that you can get, you can call or send emails, probably send emails. I don't know how they do it. Mm-hmm. But they really do it. These doctors, there's a group of about 10 of them, and they will talk to other, motility doctors and give them advice and talk about their patients and help them out.
Right. Start sharing, though, right?
Have all that information for them, so that if they get somebody that walks in with it, they can say, don't specialize in it, not my, I'm not great on it, but I'm willing to help, because he's the only guy around. And I'm willing to talk to you. I'm willing to call them about it and see what they say. What are your symptoms? Oh, that makes sense. Anything. And I think it's educating, and I don't know how you educate doctors without putting it into medical school. And it is in there now, but not enough.
Yeah.
When they do their GI specialty stuff, there's not enough knowledge. So even the newer doctors who do know of it don't know anything about it.
Well, Laura, is there anything else you'd like to add before we get going here?
I don't think so, other than anybody that is diagnosed with it or newly diagnosed, Facebook, but also, like I said, you can get the websites for GPACT, which is G-PACT, is there. If you type that in for Facebook, you can find them.
I believe we have it on our website, too, just so you know.
Oh, yeah. I think you put them on there. And then the other one, the Association of Gastrointestinal Motility Disorders, which is AGMD. And if you just type in AGMD on Facebook, it'll go. And that you can get, information, go to their websites, give them a call. They are just there to help. That's all they are, people that want to help. Mm-hmm. And anything they can. None of us are doctors. We all work to help anybody else because we get it. It stinks. For, like I'm trying to stay clean here. It really stinks having this disease. And anybody you can talk to that has it or that knows of it is one of the best things you can do for yourself. You make, network with other people that have it, because it validates what you have, and it will make you feel so much better. Yeah. And a lot of times, like on our Facebook groups, we get so many tips, because somebody will put, a question out. Has anybody tried, I don't know, Ensure or something, anything like that. And the conversations will go into, oh, no, I've used this one, and that seemed to help me. And, and you're just talking innocent, drinks like those. And somebody might find something else that works for them, and they do all the time. They're like, oh, that was awesome, I tried that one, and, it seems to sit well and doesn't seem to be making me sick, so I like it, and it's working, and helping, thank you. I mean, that's huge for our that you'll get more out of that probably than you will out of the doctors. And that's I hate to say it that way, but the knowledge just isn't out there yet.
Right.
And the good doctors are so hard. I mean, like I said, I live in Massachusetts, and in Boston, there's only one motility specialist in this entire state.
Wow.
And he's at Mass General, and he is a minimum 3 months for an appointment, and that's even if you're his patient. Like when you come in for an appointment and need to do a follow-up, it's 3 months or more because he's so busy. Because he's the only guy. It's tough. So network with people somehow. There's also a website called Inspire. I don't know if anybody's been on there. And that is for anybody with any disease, actually. It's kind of social media, but not really. It's a complete medical website, and you go on, you can join it, it's free, and it gives you all kinds of, there's probably, I don't know, I mean, like for GI, AGMD sponsors part of the site, GPAC sponsors part of it, and they have big conversations, you can ask questions, and it's just about medical. There's nothing else in it.
Oh, I wanted to ask you quickly, what is the MD VIP site?
There is a...
So sorry, forgot.
mdvip.com.
Yeah.
It's primary care physicians all over the country. It is they used to be called, kind of a snooty concierge service. That's what these kind of doctors were called. There is a yearly fee. I know out in my area it can be up to like $2,000 a year, but I don't know if that's the same all over the country. Every doctor has a different amount.
Wow. What does it do?
However, they have more. Your appointments are an hour long. You need to get in. You're guaranteed 48 hours usually that day, because they have to leave appointments open every day for people to come in on emergency appointments. They have the best service. They're like basically required to be like their help, the reception and everybody. You need something done, it's done. And these doctors have time to spend with you instead of just pushing you through like the cattle drive.
Right.
They can sit
Spend
and
10 minutes, give you a prescription.
But yeah, right. And they don't do it that way. They can do, okay, well, this is the problem. Let's Band-Aid it a little for right now, but let's do this so we can fix the problem.
Mm-hmm.
They have time. And like my doctor always says, the only thing I can know to help you with is what you tell me. So if you don't have time to actually sit and talk to them, 10 minutes is never enough, even if you have a list. You can't get it out, what you need to talk to them about. And if you can sit and talk to them, they can really help you. And it is, I have 24/7 access to her cell phone. She answers it. I mean, it's amazing. It's an amazing service. There's a lot of perks to it. And it is an extra fee every year, but I have Medicare. They take whatever insurance. That's not the problem. Mm-hmm. It's just, there is that fee. It is it is tax deductible if you deduct your medical.
By the way, Barbie Engel says, my PCP is at MD VIP Doctor 2. I have my provider's cell phone. He meets me at the hospital or calls ahead for me, so they are ready for me. Only 600 patients per provider. This is so cool that Laura's doc does it too. Yep, 24/7.
It is, yes, and she'll do the same as hospitals. She calls. They know before I get there. She makes them call her, even if, because nowadays.
But isn't this how it should all be? You know what I mean?
It's
like,
good.
really?
Well, back when, unfortunately, I'm 38 years professional, or 39, professional patient.
Right.
Because I've been in the system so long, starting with the diabetes. And back in those days, it kind of was, you got a good half hour or more. If you had a busy doctor, you'd still get a half hour or so. But what people don't also realize is the population has almost doubled since the last 40 years.
Right.
And
we have more sick people now today, too.
Right. Right. So many sick people. And unfortunately, a lot of it is, our food and everything else that's made us sick.
Yes.
And that's that someday they'll figure that out. Well, they know it, but, they have to know it.
I think they know it already. I think that, well, that's not for this show.
Yeah, that's true. But, right. But if anybody has any other questions that they want to send in to you,
absolutely,
that are specific, I will happy to answer anything. Okay.
Well, Laura, I just want to thank. I mean, I want to thank you so much for coming on Conspiracies Against Wellness. I'm honored and excited that I was able to have you and Melissa on this week as a guest, and we were able to help educate and spread some more awareness for the gastroparesis community, because I know you guys really need it, and I really look forward to working with you both in the future. It's rare I meet such strong and intelligent women that are willing to take action, and I have a great feeling that we are going to do some amazing things within many of the communities that we are part of. So thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for having me on, and I really like the opportunity that we may be able to work together.
Yes, absolutely.
I think advocacy for all of our illnesses is more important than anybody knows. You know, that it really is. It's the only way to get help.
I agree. And we deal with, we might not have the same disease, but we deal with the same things, usually, the same fallouts of it all. So, yeah. Well, I just want to thank you again. And Call Nation, thank you for taking the time to listen in tonight. A quick reminder that on Monday is the solar eclipse. I am so excited about this because I am a huge space junkie. I hope the skies are clear. I will see you all next Tuesday, and have a wonderful night, Call Nation.
Listening to Conspiracies Against Wellness with Janelle Elgaway. Join us next week to get in on the conversation. The opinions expressed on this program are those of the host and callers, and not necessarily those of EXG, LLC, its employees, or sponsors. I'm David Schiff.
The Cause Show with Janelle Elgaway is copyright 2017 by EXG LLC. All rights reserved.